Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk. In this episode, we go across the waters to Antigua, well, virtually anyway, and we talk with Graeme West, Cricket West Indies high performance manager. He'll be discussing with us the many issues in West Indies cricket, the issues of contracts that we've heard so much about recently, and generally speaking, how he goes about, along with his team, in charting the way forward virtually for West Indies cricket. Wayne Holder and Ayana Holder will be making the trip with me, so you'll be hearing from them as well. So when we come back, we'll be in Antigua, virtually, chatting with Graeme West.
Whatever the challenge that you face, you'll need effective insurance solutions. Look no further than IGS Insurance Brokers. We specialize in commercial, auto insurance, life, individual and group health, as well as pension packages.
Our aim at IGS is to offer the best possible service to our clients and at the same time to be a credit to the insurance industry in Barbados.
Call us at 242-7642. IGS Insurance Brokers. You can stay safe with us. Don't let annoying pests bug you. Lick them for 6. Omega Pest Control is the perfect solution. We are experts in termite and pest eradication, specialized mosquito treatments, foundation, residential, commercial, and industrial treatments. Call us day or night, or visit us at our office located at Fieldside Drive, Long Gap, St. Michael. Omega Pest Control. Call 425-5954, 231-6526, or email us at opcl@caribsurf.com.
So Graeme, tell us a bit about yourself. Yes, you're the high performance manager. I'm sure that those of us who are around cricket can work out what that means. Those who follow cricket, maybe not as closely, will suspect what it means. Tell us exactly what it means.
So I manage high performance.
that's the amount that we figured out.
So it really it's a great role because it really does cover pretty much everything that we do through Cricket West Indies. Everything is aspiring to that high performance pinnacle. So therefore, we pick players up from a young age through our regional tournaments, and we're looking very much at a pathway that would feed into the senior men's and women's team eventually, but clearly there's a lot of work to be done before that happens, and that's sort of, I guess, predominantly my responsibility would be, if you were to assess what I do, it would be based around how well prepared are players when they move into the senior team, how well prepared are they when they progress from youth cricket to senior cricket, from first class cricket to A-team cricket, whatever that step up is, how well have we prepared those players? That's really what the measure of the high performance programs, but the high performance pathways would come under some scrutiny, if that was the appropriate term. So it's a very wide-ranging role compared with where I started in Barbados. It was very much as the head coach of the HPC. It was a responsibility for 13, 14 players, and those players alone, really, at the time, giving them a really good grounding and education across all aspects of the game. and ultimately preparing them for international cricket. But clearly, some were further developed than others. But having Toby Redford had taken the first cohort, and the second and the third cohort has certainly produced a number of international cricketers, of which the program itself should be very proud, and those people that supported it and delivered on it. But now my remit certainly goes way beyond that. Right the way down to regional under 15, under 17, under 19 players. We have a West Indies under 19 girls team in formation for the first under 19 girls World Cup in 2023. So it's kind of an additional element to what we do, because we need to start generating lots of interest, lots of young girls playing the game, so that we have a significant pool of players to start to pick from. So certainly lots of challenges, but I think it's an exciting role, and as I said, it's because it's so diverse. It does allow me to bring into play lots of the experience that I've picked up in my time in the cricket.
Well, Graeme, I would have met you some years back when you were, you were still doing what you're doing now, but you had taken a bit of a break, and you were doing a bit of commentary as an analyst in I don't remember which series it was, and that's how we basically met. But I don't know if the name Graeme West is as well known around the region. Tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about your background, cricket, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I just mentioned in there that I followed Toby Redford as the head coach of the high performance centre, and I'd actually followed Toby as the academy director at Middlesex in the UK. So that was really my first step into the sort of high performance arena. So in England, an academy would consist of about 10 to 12 players aged 15 to 18, but all with aspirations to get into the first team at Middlesex, into the professional game, so to speak. But again, there I had responsibilities for developing all the young players in the county that were coming through. So that was really, as I said, the first step into high performance. Up until then, I'd done a lot of work in grassroots cricket, in participation and recreational cricket. My background wasn't as a professional cricketer. I'd played some very good club cricket, and in England we have second team cricket, which is the level below the first team county cricket. But yeah, a lot of my experience was around developing kids in their initial experiences of cricket, and I sort of progressed very, very gradually through the system at Middlesex, with the age groups sort of under 11s, and then when I was doing the under 17s, the under 19s, that started to fit in very nicely with the academy position. I'd have had a little bit of exposure working with the first team on occasion, but just as that was starting to really push forward, and players were breaking into the first team off the back of the academy, the opportunity to come to Barbados came forward, and it's almost 9 years now since I came to the Caribbean. Huge learning curve, certainly the first couple of years in Barbados, apart from 10 days in Jamaica on honeymoon, and a cricket tour with Middlesex under 15s to Barbados for 10 days. My knowledge of the Caribbean was incredibly limited, and it wasn't really until 2 years into the role where I was able to actually get out to the other territories. I really started to get a better understanding of very much where the players have come from, their backgrounds, their experiences as young cricketers, which shaped them as, when they were coming into HPC, most of them 18, 19, 21, 22 years of age. And And really, until I had that understanding, I was coaching as I would have done in the UK, as I kind of knew. The only way I really knew how to coach, and so it was very much, it evolved in those 5 years that I spent, very happily in Barbados. We've transitioned to Antigua, and the role has transitioned as well, and therefore it's taken me in a slightly different direction. Up until last year, I still had some hands-on coaching responsibilities with the under-19, but now I am predominantly going to manage and develop players, from that role rather than the hands-on day-to-day coaching. So it's it's been a great 9 years. It's gone incredibly quickly, but I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot happen in cricket in the Caribbean. The West Indies team has evolved. A number of head coaches have obviously come through, with both the men's team and the women's team. So it's been interesting. Lots of successes in there, and obviously areas that we still need to develop. And I'm sure when we touch on development, some of those things will come up, because I think, it's very much, there's still a lot left for me to achieve. But I think, 9 years of experience now, 9 years of understanding the system, certainly it's a great foundation, I believe, to be, even more productive moving forward.
Well, you found yourself, Graeme, stationed in Antigua, there at the Coolidge Cricket Ground now. I think that is where the headquarters for the high performance setup is located. But the tentacles of our West Indies cricket spread throughout the islands. And I'd be interested to find out what interaction is there between what you do at the High Performance Center and, well, I'm calling it the High Performance Center as it's not the title, but that is where it is located, as I said, and the territorial boards, the territorial coaches. Is there any direct interaction between you there in Antigua and the rest of the coaching staff in the individual territories?
Yeah, I mean, the last 12, 18 months have been very challenging for everybody. But I think one of the things that it's taught us is the ability to communicate with people remotely, and that is very significant in the Caribbean. We are situated as we are. It has its limitations, but I think we've certainly found ways to overcome that far more in the last year or so. So we now have a coach education manager in Chris Brabazon, and we will meet, Chris, myself, and Jimmy Adams. We will meet with the six franchise head coaches every month. So there's regular dialogue, just to see how they're getting on. Some things that come back to us from above in terms of the senior team, trying to feed those into the franchises. So that's ongoing. We've sort of had similar discussions in terms of with the youth cricket. We're trying to put together this under-19 program with Floyd Reef as the head coach. And we've had to have dialogue with every territory on a regular basis, just to ensure that the rollout of the programs is happening, and it's happening in the way that we would like it. So it's actually been really good, because we have interacted more, we have engaged more with the territories. We're starting to understand a little bit more in terms of what's been happening. Obviously, the first class coaches, where we're looking for feedback on the international players when they return, just to make sure that they are doing the work that Phil, Roddy, and his team have sort of set for them. So there's been a lot of engagement there. We've also introduced the IPP for our players, which is individual personal programs. And in order to do that, we've supported all of the coaches in the franchises and senior team in terms of working their way through these profiles with their players. This has been sort of the first time this year where we've been able to do that. And again, it's created more dialogue, more interaction, and just strengthening our relationships. We all want to support the franchise coaches. Obviously, coach education is very broad, but just a 30-minute catch up just to discuss a couple of topical issues, it becomes coach education where you start sharing ideas and thoughts and how that could be applied. And I fully understand that there's huge variety in terms of what's happening from St. Kitts and Nevis to Trinidad, and again, just once you understand the conditions, the facilities, players, all those sorts of things, then I certainly feel far more comfortable now having those conversations than I would have done several years ago.
Graeme, you mentioned the HPC earlier. Can you give us a detailed idea of what life for a player in the academy was like?
Pretty tough. They worked hard. They worked hard with the facility there at UE. We were able to work on the technical and the tactical side of the game, but also the physical side. I think that's become more and more prominent in this generation of cricketers. But also the mental skills, which is something that again is relatively new to cricket. But it was a comprehensive program. Again, I'd have to say that Toby set that up from scratch, and I sort of picked it up and ran with it. And yeah, I mean, the guys were in first thing in the morning, and it was just a very good range of activities. Obviously, predominantly cricket, but the challenge as a head coach is to keep it fresh, to keep it challenging. There had to be fun components in there, but the first group we went to Bangladesh, which was a real sort of challenge for all of us. It was my first experience of Bangladesh and most of the players. So a lot of work went into preparing them for those sorts of challenges. But it was very intense. It was, I think that the results over time, the players that have come out of that program, they haven't just demonstrated from a cricket skill perspective, but when you think someone like Carlos as an ambassador for cricket and for the game, the ways he's been able to speak about the game, enthuse, encourage young players. Part of that would have come through the education that the players received at HBC. So it was, as I said, it was certainly a great challenge for me. And those two cohorts. I think one of the really interesting things is that was 2012, 2013. Now, someone like Kyle Mears was on that program in 2013. Now, 2021, and he's performing on the world stage. That is 8 years in coming, if you like, for a player that came through that program. And I think that's one of the areas that, again, when I look at responsibilities, we've got to narrow that. If it's taken 8 years for a player to fulfill their potential, it's too long. We need guys coming through quicker than that. But I think Kyle's quite a good a case study, if you like, in that great ability, great talent at a young age. It's just that whole process, that pathway of perfecting your skills to be successful at the highest level. I mean, the innings in Bangladesh will clearly go down as one of the great test innings. The fact that it was, in its first test or first series makes it, all the more remarkable. But it just goes to show what he's capable and able to do.
For whatever reasons, Graeme, at one point the HPC itself, that program had to be discontinued. How much was that a setback, a serious setback in the development of West Indies cricket at the international level? And if so, how serious a setback would that have been?
I mean, the system was evolving, and we were about to go professional with the first class franchises. So that was done on the basis that the franchises would develop an academy system in each territory, which would effectively replicate some of what was done in Barbados. Now, I mean, the nature of the season at the time allowed players to come to HBC for a long stretch because the window of first-class cricket was very short. And as you expanded that, clearly the players needed to be, playing first-class cricket. So, the ability for the franchises to develop their programs is still a work in progress. And again, that's something that I play a part in trying to facilitate the advancement of those systems. A good academy system is building the foundation for each player, whether it be their technical skills, whether it be their physical skills, their mental skills. The intention of an academy is to try to develop that, and then from there you're able to add to it. Without that foundation, it becomes a lot harder to certainly sustain and continue to move forwards and progress. And I think, on reflection, the current situation where you kind of go from under-19 regional cricket straight into professional cricket without too much in between. I think that's probably an area where if we can develop that and provide more opportunities for those players 19, 20, 21 years of age, just that kind of fits in between the two, the sort of youth and the professional level. I think that would go some way to replace what we had in Barbados. I mean, it was only for a very select few. The academy's regional level, you could be talking 90 to 100 players if each franchise has 15 or 16 players. To put all your eggs in one basket with just 10 or 12 players is quite risky. But you've got to get that quality in at that age. You've got to get quality support, but they've also got to get quality cricket. One of the frustrations is that we're not going to be able to run any regional youth cricket again this year with COVID. That means that's 2 years, or where the boys and the girls have missed out on those windows of opportunity. And you, for all the practice and the training that you do, you've got to get out in the middle to learn. That's my sort of feeling on that. Yes, learning can take place in many ways, but for a young cricketer to not be able to play competitively, not to be challenged and tested for 2 years, we don't get that back. It's going to be hard for those players, and it is going to hold up their development somewhat, because you can't replace being out in the middle for all the work that you do in the net and in practice. It's you're your competitive cricket is still an important component to your learning.
Well, Graeme, refreshment breaks are all a part of cricket, so we're going to have one, and we'll be back on Anything Cricket. Let's talk.
Whatever the challenge that you face, you'll need effective insurance solutions. Look no further than IGS Insurance Brokers. We specialize in commercial, auto insurance, life, individual and group health, as well as pension packages.
Our aim at IGS is to offer the best possible service to our clients and at the same time to be a credit to the insurance industry in Barbados.
Call us at 242-7642. IGS Insurance Brokers. You can stay safe with us.
Welcome back. Graeme, the issue of contracts that has been ventilated so much over the last few weeks it's been ventilated, but I don't know that it's gone anywhere. Although we have heard the Vice President of Cricket West Indies suggest that they're going to look to improve that whole process. And I was quite glad to hear that, because at least it meant that I was not the only voice, as it seemed to me at one stage, that felt that something more needed to be done. You have a number of players, and they're fighting for contracts, if you will, every year. You're told that an average of 30 or so is required as a batsman, and it seems as though some of us believe that when you have that internal competition, if you will, and you pick the best out of that is going to have an impact on how we represent ourselves against other jurisdictions where people are averaging 40, 45, and 50. Personally, I don't think so. I think a greater development program is needed even at that stage. How can we, yes, I understand the need for contracts, but how can we add to that whole scenario rather than simply depending on fellas knocking over each other to get a contract? What more needs to be done at that level?
You're right. If you're picking players that are averaging 30 in first class cricket, you can't expect them to average 40 in test match cricket. We've got to develop the players to then reach those targets in first class cricket, and also prepare them for test match cricket. And that's as I said from the outset, that's one of the areas where I think my work needs to be measured, because the better prepared the players are, the more that we will have done in that process of taking them from a young cricketer into the international arena. I talked about the player profiles, and I think this is the key, because I think that for too long players have basically continued to do what they've always done, and therefore good players have remained good players, because have they really assessed, have they really analysed what they do, and have they really decided, made a commitment to try to improve in those areas that have held them back. And I think I can certainly point to a number of players now, having been in the West Indies for 9 years, that kind of come into that category, that are still performing, they're still producing what they were producing 7 or 8 years ago. They haven't really moved forwards. They haven't gone back, but they haven't really moved forwards. And to make that step from first class cricket to international cricket, you need a number of elements, in my opinion. Firstly, you've got to be able to think, and I'm not sure that in some areas of development, players have been encouraged to do the thinking. If you've got coaches that are very much of the tell approach, your young player doesn't really learn how to think for himself. He just goes out and he follows an instruction, and then suddenly finds himself in a situation that he's not familiar with. And what does he do? If he's not accustomed to having to think for himself, to make decisions, to adapt, he's going to struggle. And you pointed out there are a number of players that have gone in and done very well very quickly, and then not really progress. Now, the world of sport, the world of international sport, is all about analytics. Everybody knows your business very, very quickly. If you can't play the short ball, everybody will know that very soon. And therefore, if you don't adapt, if you don't learn to deal with that, you're going to fail. You can get away with it whilst people don't really know too much about you, but in a very short space of time, they will know your strengths, they will know your weaknesses. And if you're not adaptable and you're not flexible enough to be able to improve in those areas, then you get this situation where players get dropped out. They go back, they carry on, they do what they've done before. They do enough to get back to that level, but the same information is there. People understand how to attack you, and therefore, going back to how well you prepare players, our players have got to be prepared for lots of different situations, lots of different conditions. You hear about the benefits of traveling and playing in different conditions. The difficulty that the guys have now is that test series are 2 test matches. By the time you've got accustomed and acclimatized, you're done. You're back on the plane and you're going home. When you used to get 4 or 5 test matches in a series, you might get away with that first test where you're still, getting used to the different conditions. But then you start to develop, you start to adapt, and you become more successful. That's the challenge now for a lot of these players entering the international arena. You just don't get that time. You don't get as many warm-up games. You get thrown in straight away, and you have to hit the ground running. So I don't know quite how much the contracts will change that. I think it's more about getting players a better awareness of what they need to develop, what they need to improve on, but also build on their strengths. The strength is going to be the foundation to their game. But just giving them a little bit more responsibility, a little bit more accountability, I think will help.
You just mentioned a word, accountability, and listening to what you said, players being able to think and be independent. We're not playing as much cricket as before. We're not playing 5-match test series. A test series is 2 matches, sometimes 3 matches. These guys are professionals. They are paid a very good salary as a professional cricketer. How can we make those guys accountable? Because I believe that the money they're being paid is pretty much a reward for years of hard work. How do we make those guys accountable to maintain and improve that performance? How do we get them to invest in themselves and become more independent?
Yeah, look, you talk about mindset. How much are you prepared to give? How much are you prepared to put in? You can be critical of a practice facility. You can be critical of a coach, but ultimately it comes down to you. It comes down to your responsibility. If you're prepared to do the work, and this is where you've got to be honest. You've got to be honest enough to accept that there are certain things that what you are doing is not good enough, or is not going to be good enough when you get to that next level. If that's where your aspirations are, then every time you get in the nets, every time you turn up for practice, you have that purpose and you have that objective. And again, I don't think that that's always the case. And as I said, if players continue to do the things that they've always done, they're going to do those things very well. But there is more to the game now, and therefore, without that honesty and without that ability to analyze your game and identify, and the thing is, there's so many great players out there, past and present, to look at, to study, to pick things off. If you don't have that desire, then maybe your ceiling is that little bit lower to that player that is all about going out, you know, prepared to do the work, prepared to do the extra work, understands that the physical side of the game is just as important as the batting and the bowling. You know, how many players have fallen away because the extra workload has been too much. You know, they've not been able to sustain high performance for long enough periods. We know the game can be more intense now. You know, travel, moving around, all that sort of thing. It's increased the intensity. There is less rest and recovery periods, but that's the way that the game has gone. And again, you have to be prepared for that. Those are the demands at the elite level. And yes, the players are professional. That's because they get a wage for what they do. But, you know, have they been professional in everything that they do, in their preparation, in their training, you know, all those sorts of things. It is really a combination of these areas now. And, you know, just thinking around, you got your technical and your tactical skills, and your physical and your mental skills, and even your lifestyle skills. And if there are weaknesses within there, eventually they get exposed, and it affects your cricket. If those are strong, if you have a strong foundation and a base to really build out from, then you can grow. You know, you can be exposed to the next level and be able to compete. Yes, you have to make some adjustments, and yes, you might have to make some changes. But as long as you have that foundation, your skills allow you to grow and to build. Then that sort of transition through our pathway would and will be that much smoother. Some players have you know, sort of jumped from under-19 cricket into international cricket, you know, very quickly. But again, on reflection, were they prepared across all those elements? Yes, they may have been gifted in terms of their skills, but, you know, mentally, were they prepared? Physically, were they prepared? You know, international cricket is tough, and it's going to expose you somewhere down the line if those weaknesses exist.
I think Ayana's got another question for you, but we're going to take a break first of all. And anything cricket, let's talk.
Whatever the challenge that you face, you'll need effective insurance solutions. Look no further than IGS Insurance Brokers. We specialize in commercial, auto insurance, life, individual and group health, as well as pension packages.
Our aim at IGS is to offer the best possible service to our clients and at the same time to be a credit to the insurance industry in Barbados.
Call us at 242-7642. IGS Insurance Brokers. You can stay safe with us. Don't let annoying pests bug you. Lick them for 6. Omega Pest Control is the perfect solution. We are experts in termite and pest eradication, specialized mosquito treatments, foundation, residential, commercial, and industrial treatments. Call us day or night, or visit us at our office located at Fieldside Drive, Long Gaps in Michael. Omega Pest Control. Call 425-5954, 231-6526, or email us at opcl@caribsurf.com.
Welcome back. Well, we are with Graeme West, the high performance manager, Cricket West Indies, and with me also Ayana Holder and Wayne Holder.
Yes, Graeme just talked about players jumping from under 19 youth level cricket into the senior international level. And the names Shenwan Hetmeyer and Azuri Joseph screamed out at me as he was making that statement. And, you know, there's a lot of harping back, a lot of talk about the glory days and the mental toughness of today's players. But what we have to admit is that a lot of the conditions that existed during those earlier years, these glory years when West Indies had the golden period, no longer exist. And do you think, though, that there's a need using the example of what transpired back then for us now to replicate those conditions in a setup like a high performance center, whereby boys don't play the amount of cricket that was played back then? Boys and men, I mean, cricket was just played every day all over the place. That is no longer so. Do you think, though, that we can create the conditions to replicate for today's young players what existed back then?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about development in preparing for today, when I think back as a youngster, it was a lot of it was down to the ability to play. You know, very much informally, just to play at the front of the house, to play on the beach, you know, those sorts of things. If you start to take those opportunities away, you know, where do we as kids, where do we learn what we learn? You know, having to sort of play against all these older brothers and sisters, and you know that challenge of being the smallest one there, the last one to get a bat. You know, all those sorts of things are experiences that I think are really important. You know, I think about my son, and he doesn't really watch the game. Like I would have watched any cricket that was on TV. I'd have watched cricket at the park. You know, it was very much, I was learning the game all the time. Whereas, you know, he has a go every now and again, but he's not really learning. And this is one of the things that we've been talking about. He doesn't really understand the game because he's not exposing himself to it as much as, you know, when I think about when I was, you know, 9 years of age, which he is now. So in terms of development is all about initially just creating those opportunities where kids can play the game, where kids can enjoy the game, and you naturally learn by playing. I think the only thing I would add to that is to be taught good fundamentals, because they will stay with you. You know, your game will evolve and your game will develop, and you'll introduce trigger movements and different little things. But essentially, if you have good fundamental skills, then that is, I talk a lot about the foundation, the building blocks. If we can get those in place in our system through development, through school cricket, through the kiddie cricket programs, then we have something to build on. You know, if we miss that out, then it's very hard to suddenly, you know, establish that as players get older. I mean, we have to accept there are more distractions, and there are more other sports competing for your best talent. But just going back to development and the pathway, we're looking for players when we see them under 15 level, for example, with the boys. You know, we have criteria now that we're looking at. That we're assessing players. We're not just going on the stats. Clearly, the stats will always give you an indicator. But when you watch under 15s, you know, physically, some of them resemble 11 and 12-year-olds, and some of them resemble, you know, almost grown men. So you've got to balance that out. And our sort of assessment, our framework in terms of what we're looking for from our batters, from our bowlers, from our fielders, from our wicketkeepers, you know, it gives us something that's consistent. And the more that we can get that message out to coaches, to teachers, but also to the young players themselves, you know, these are the key things that we're looking for. As a batter now, even in Test cricket, there's an importance of scoring right the way around the ground, around the wicket. You know, that sort of 360 cricket batter is just is something that you've got to start to develop from a young age. You know, it's if you're starting to introduce the sweeps to players at 23, 24 years of age, they've missed out on that window where they can just try it, you know, in the garden, and they could try little things. And it's hard to catch that up. So I really think the importance of investment in ability to participate and enjoy cricket, you know, initially, we can build from there. You know, our pathway, our high performance system will pick up players, you know, off the back of that. But it needs more. You know, we've been talking about the women's game for some time. The pool of players to pick from has been small. You know, we need to address that. We need to make sure that girls at 10, 11, 12 years of age are encouraged to play the game, that they get a good experience, they get some good teaching of the basics, and from there, you know, we can really start to take them forward. We can grow them, we can give them the opportunities. But that for me is very much where development starts, and without that, my role becomes significantly harder, because we're trying to do things a little bit too late in some cases.
Graeme, you know, you mentioned pathway, and right now I believe that there's a bit of a lull between the under 19 and playing for your senior team, your territory, and moving on to international cricket. And I think that the current youth structure could be tweaked a bit to make it, instead of having under 15, under 17, and under 19, maybe we can explore the idea of having under 16, under 19, under 23, where we because I believe when you're moving out of under 19 cricket, I see a bit like school. You know, you're moving out of high school into university, and then you're thrown into the world of work. What do you think? What do you think about that?
I think you've been listening to a lot of my conversations. Yeah, it's an area that we need to address. It is a difficult one. I mean, if you think back to the last under 19 World Cup, we had Jaden Seals. Jaden Seals has moved from that youth level into franchise cricket, you know, very, very smoothly. But then the majority of the other players in that squad, you know, are still trying to find their way through into the professional arena, because that is the next step. Now, Barbados has always been very good, you know, and its academy contracts, it's recognised that there's a number of players in Barbados coming out of youth cricket that need to be invested in, and they are very supportive, and other territories, other franchises are starting to embrace that now. Guyana have had a program for some time. Jamaica now introduced it to 3 or 4 young players. So that's kind of helping, but you know, we need regular competitive cricket for your under 23, and that's something that it's a work in progress, because as I said before, a lot of these guys need cricket. You know, they need to play the game, and without that competitive cricket and structured cricket, it's harder. They need it. They need a shop window to showcase what they can do. They need to be knocking on the door of the franchises, but you know, regular cricket at that level, I think will start to bridge the gap. It will effectively be, as you said, like the university level of your learning. You know, you're progressing, and it is a jump from under 19s into the franchise teams, and there's certainly it's well recognised, it's well understood. It just takes time at the moment to try to address it. I mean, CPL's been really good in having 2 under 23s in each of the franchises. The CPL started to embrace that, so that things are happening that are helping, but it's helping the few rather than, you know, a bit more of the majority. So yeah, work in progress, but I certainly take your point, and yeah, it would certainly be an interesting one. I mean, we are at the high performance level. We are able to bring in players as emerging players, if you like. You know, once we can start moving people around the Caribbean on a more regular basis, those programs really just starting to take off in Antigua, where you could bring players in for 2 or 3 weeks. You could work with 6 or 8 batters, 6 or 8 seamers, spinners, and it was starting to fit really nicely in that sort of transition phase. And I think we can see in other countries have introduced sort of an emerging player or an under-23 team to their system. And I think we would certainly benefit from something like that.
Yes, just to change tact slightly, Graeme, 2016 World Cup, ICC Under-19 Youth World Cup, Bangladesh, that certainly would have to be one of the high points of your tenure here in the Caribbean. Was that the highlight? And if so, what were some of the other highlights since you have been here working with West Indies cricket?
Yeah, it will certainly be the highlight. It'd be hard to beat that. I don't think nothing can prepare you for that, and I don't think even looking back at it now, I don't think it really sunk in at the time. It really was quite a strange sort of the whole. Well, the run chase was just so difficult from the sidelines. It was so tight, and it was so hard. The Indian bowlers and fielders were phenomenal, and getting over the line was a relief to win. But it was such a relief. But when I consider players that played in the friendships with the coaching staff, the support staff, that we still have those. That's probably just as important to the actual outcome. Other successes, we had success I had success in Sri Lanka with an A team. We won an ODI series there 3-0, and I think that really to win any series overseas now is really, really significant. And having again look back on a lot of things, that definitely is certainly right up there with winning the World Cup. But I think also each time a player progresses, that for me is a success. I mean, lots of the guys that went to HBC playing for the West Indies, it's nice to have been a part of their journey. I would never put any of that down to me, because that's not the case. But just to have been part of their journey, to have been a support for them along the way, and you get that sort of recognition talking to players now. We have that. We maybe didn't have that relationship when we first started, but definitely over time it has developed, and I find that really, really satisfying. Under 19 players, stay in touch after the kind of that cohort concludes. Again, it's a reflection on the relationships that you've developed with players, and personally, my personality, that is really important, that people have actually recognized your efforts and your support. I think that's, I've worked with a lot of really good players. Some I think have still got a lot to offer, and we'll see some of those come through in the next few years. But yeah, I mean, for someone that only really got as far as playing club cricket, to have gone to 3 World Cups, to have toured a number of countries with West Indies teams, I could never have dreamed of doing any of that once upon a time. So all of those, I think have been really important. Achievements, successful or unsuccessful. We won the World Cup in 2016, and then we came 10th 2 years later. But it was still a great experience to go to New Zealand, to experience how cricket is played there, how it's developed, how it's administered. It's a real learning experience and a real learning curve with all of the things that I've done. So I'm very grateful to Cricket West Indies all of those opportunities. And some have been successful and some have been not so successful. But I've certainly got if it all finished tomorrow, I'd certainly have a lot to reflect on and be quite proud of.
Thank you.
Well, the South Africans are coming. You were talking about how touring and so on, but the South Africans are coming. Are you looking forward to the series?
Yeah, I mean, we actually had South Africa men, women, and under-19s due to be here during the summer at one point. It looks now like the under-19 squad will come a little bit later on in the year. I think from a women's perspective, the South Africa women are, moving forward really rapidly, and they'll be a great test to our players, because they certainly have moved their game forward in the last 6 to 12 months, despite there not being a great deal of cricket. I think that's going to be really exciting. Good challenge, a good test for our players. Haven't had that much cricket of late. In terms of the men, I think it's a real opportunity across the format. Certainly the momentum from recent performances. I know that the Test series finished 0-0, but lots of good performances, lots of positive performances to take in there off the back of the Bangladesh Test wins and obviously the white ball successes here in Antigua against Sri Lanka. And certainly, you're looking at those squads now, and you're looking at your Parans and your Hetmeyers, and the expectation is starting to go up with some of those players. I think we all recognise their talent, but we want to see them start to dominate a little bit more, which we know that they can.
You mentioned. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry. Go on.
Oh no, so you mentioned the women cricketers a bit just now. Are you involved in the current camp? The camp is going on
with the women?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So
how's that been going?
So say again.
How has that been going?
Yeah, I mean, we had a camp in January and a camp now, and the logistical challenges because we had players that couldn't get to Antigua in January, and with all the COVID tests and everything else, it's a real headache, because when you have players arriving at different times, obviously they have to go into isolation, and just managing which players are at which stage of isolation, all that sort of thing. Believe me, it's an additional challenge to running any program.
Has this impacted on the fitness issue? Because I was hearing some talk earlier in the camp that many of the women players, when the tests had been completed, hadn't done very well at all, and that caused some discussion in certain sectors of the Caribbean cricket community, if you will, discussions. Given that they had not long completed camp earlier this year, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, the camp finished end of January. I'll give an example. The players from Trinidad didn't get back home for another month after that, because we couldn't get them back to Trinidad, and then they had 14 days quarantine. So look, it's a work in progress in terms of the fitness. Yes, it needs to be developed. It needs to be improved. There were some circumstances that went against some of the players over the last couple of months. I mean, even there in Barbados, it's been very difficult with lockdowns to do the sort of conditioning that you would normally be able to do. But we're working through it. We've got a really good support staff in place now with the women's squad. But it does take time. But the plan is to have the team here in Antigua now for some time, which will certainly, that ability to monitor the players on a daily basis will help us. And as I said at the start, we got some younger players that are, I think, 16, 17 years of age, but really exciting. And the opportunity for them to come into these camps, for them to understand about the physical skills, about fitness, things like that. It's really important that we get that done now. And once they get that in place, then their game is going to grow, very, very quickly. I think most of the girls only really play 20 over cricket up until the age of 19. So if you imagine going from 20 over cricket to 50 over cricket, for them is a huge thing. For us, we may not recognize that. So again, you're starting to prepare them now for those sorts of challenges. But I think we've got a dozen players here under 21 or under 22, which is really, really important. So that's good. But yeah, going back to the men's series, it's definitely an opportunity. I mean, in terms of the test rankings, we're moving up steadily, but this is an opportunity. I think in St. Lucia, we know the wickets tend to play pretty well there, pretty quick. So if Shannon and Roche and the rest of the bowling unit can really fire there, we saw good contributions from the batters right the way down the order. I mean, fantastic to see Rakeem Alzari making runs at 8 and 9. That I think that always makes such a difference to test matches. As a fielding team coming off the back of that, when the tail enders have put on 90, 100, 150 for the last couple of wickets. So we've got depth. We've got depth in the batting, so we know we can get contributions right the way through. So I think is a real opportunity, this series. And then obviously Australia and Pakistan will also provide real good competitive, challenging cricket, and that's what we want to see. That's what we've got a group of players now that pretty well rehearsed in international cricket. And as I said, the guys like that, Hetmeyer, Paran, Alzari, Joseph, it's really for them to progress now and put in those big performances on a regular basis.
Graeme, thanks so much for making your debut on Anything Cricket Let's Talk. It certainly was a pleasure chatting with you and listening to your views.
Oh, certainly one of my more challenging debuts, but very, very, very kind of you to invite me on and share some of my thoughts.
I don't understand why it would be challenging. You've got to be people who I understand used to make important runs, one main holder. Ayana, who her manager is continuing to promote what she never did, rather than focus on the things that she do so well, such as umpiring and scoring and analyzing cricket. And a leg spinner who bowls more googlies than leg breaks. So I really don't understand why your debut would be challenging. But maybe you tell us that off here. So thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to interacting with you again, especially in the coming weeks when we are going to have that special program on women's cricket. So thanks to Graeme, thanks to Ayana, thanks to Wayne. Join us again soon for another episode of Anything Cricket Let's Talk.